Chapter 1365. Gu was more worried about Yen now. Was she alive or dead? Why did the mysterious continent appear in the vortex? What was that mysterious force that took Yen away? Could it be that force that took Yen to the mysterious continent? Gu didn't dare to think too much. His voice trembled as he said, "Return to the camp. I'll send a letter to Gu Beiwei immediately." He was truly afraid. However, he had to hide his fear and despair in front of Ru'er. How could Ru'er hold on if he collapsed? Gu was about to leave when Ru'er pulled him back. "Godfather, your injury." Gu Qishao subconsciously hid his bleeding arm behind his back. His body was no longer immortal, and feeding blood and flesh to the bloodvine seed was quite harmful. Ru'er tore off a piece of cloth and carefully bandaged Gu's wound. He was only 10 years old, but his movements were methodical and precise. He didn't lose out to his father's technique, nor did he lose out to his mother's professionalism. The two of them, one old and one young, were both worried and panicked. They didn't say anything else and hurried back to the camp. Jin Zi and the rest were still there. Jin Zi had already sent out the order for an emergency retreat through Eagle messengers. At this time, he had also deployed the men he'd sent out. Tang Li and Mu Ling personally led a group of cavalry and prepared to depart to inform the herders of the escape. Meanwhile, Jin Zi and Mu Ling prepared to rush to Wintercrow. The Eagle messenger was naturally much faster than them, but in such a dangerous situation, there had to be people in charge in the few big cities to personally oversee the situation. Otherwise, the grasslands would fall into chaos when the herders panicked. Not only would the grasslands north of the snowy mountains fall into chaos, but so would the grasslands south of the snowy mountains. It might even affect all of northern Li and Great Qin. Therefore, Jin Zi didn't mention that the frozen sea was about to collapse, only that there was a plague and that everyone should retreat as soon as possible. Just as Jin Zi and the rest were about to leave, Gu and Ru'er hurried back. Seeing Gu covered in wounds and bloodstains, as well as the blood on Ru'er's face, everyone was frightened. Mu Ling almost fell off her horse. She rushed to Ru'er and burst into tears. She wiped the blood off Ru'er's face as she asked, "Where's your sister? Where are your father and mother? What happened?" Tang Li rushed to Gu and choked on his words. In the end, it was Ning Jing who spoke. "Seventh young master, what's wrong?" Gu Qishao looked at everyone before rushing into the tent to write a letter. Tang Li and Jin Zi hurriedly chased after him. Ning Jing and Mu Ling were guarding Ru'er, asking anxiously. When the frozen sea turned into a sea of poison, Han Yunxi and Long Feiyi were frozen under the frozen sea, and Yen whereabouts were unknown. Mu Ling was the first to burst into tears. Tang Li mounted his horse and rushed toward the frozen sea. After sending the letter, Gu Qishao's entire body fell into a daze. It wasn't clear what he was thinking, but he simply fell into a chair in a daze. "Big White!" Mu Ling suddenly exclaimed. "Yes, Big White can do it. Big White is also a poisonous beast." Big White was a poisonous beast raised by Jun Yixie and was immune to many spoilers. Mu Ling said anxiously, "Brother Qi, Big White can cross the frozen sea, Big White can." Gu looked up and murmured, "The frozen sea is poisoned by the water of 10,000 supremes. Now, the mystic ice has become the ice of 10,000 poisons. Other than the little thing, no one can enter." They could only wait. At Wuya Mountain, Qin Min fought for 2 days and 2 nights, fighting with the Grim Reaper for Gu Beiwei. Finally, the door opened with a creak. Little Shadow, Peony, and the medicine boy all stood up, but no one dared to rush up and ask. What had she gone through in the past 2 days? Qin Min was extremely haggard. She walked to the door and sat on the steps with her head lowered. Her expression couldn't be seen, but Little Shadow and the others were afraid of her dejected appearance. Little Shadow looked into the room, but the screen blocked his view. He couldn't see his father. How was his father? Was he alive, or seeing his mother like this, Little Shadow didn't dare to walk forward. Instead, he subconsciously retreated step by step. He pursed his lips, not daring to cry out loud. Peony was anxious and hurried over to sit beside Qin Min. Young mistress. Young mistress, you. Before Peony could finish her sentence, Qin Min looked up at her. Her eyes were no longer red, but tears were streaming down her face. She said, Peony, I really can't bear to leave him. Young mistress, you're crying. Wah. Peony couldn't help but cry. Yes. Qin Min was crying. It had been 10 years, she had endured for 10 years, hidden for 10 years. Today, her tears finally flowed out. She cried. She had tried her best. Last night, she had helped Gu Beiyue calm down his true energy. However, in less than an hour, the true energy began to rampage in Gu Beiyue's body again. She couldn't suppress it at all, nor did she know how to do so. Gu Beiyue was unconscious. He had been unconscious ever since. She had been watching over him since last night, but Gu Beiyue still hadn't woken up. Even if the true energy hadn't been suppressed, he should have woken up. She didn't even know where she had gone wrong. She didn't dare to think about it. She didn't even dare to check his breathing. She couldn't accept that she had lost the bet. Even if she had already prepared herself to lose when she had decided to take the gamble. She buried her head in her knees and began to sob. Peony also cried. Little Shadow and the medicine boy stood at the side and cried as well. Their sorrowful cries filled the entire courtyard and the entire boundless mountain. However, after a while, Little Shadow and the medicine boy stopped crying. After a while, Peony also stopped crying. They looked at the door in disbelief. Gu Beiyue was standing at the door. Little Shadow rubbed her eyes in disbelief. When she looked carefully again, she really saw her father standing at the door. He was so pale, so weak, yet so gentle. It was her father. She couldn't be wrong. Her father was fine. Everyone was stunned. Only Qin Min was still burying her head in her knees and sobbing. It was as if she wanted to cry out all the forbearance, suppression, and pain that she had endured for the past 10 years. Gu Beiyue walked over step by step, his brows furrowed. He stood behind Qin Min and listened to her sobbing. For the first time, his heart hurt so much. It hurt as if a knife was cutting it. He sat down beside Qin Min. However, Qin Min was immersed in her grief, as if she would never wake up. She didn't notice the movement beside her. Qin Min, Gu Beiyue called out with heartache. Qin Min still didn't notice. Gu Beiyue looked at her helplessly. His heart ached, and he didn't know what to do. He looked at her for a long time. In the end, he sighed softly and reached out to pull her into his arms. Qin Min, don't cry. I'm still here, he said calmly. Qin Min's body immediately froze. She wanted to struggle out and raise her head, but she didn't dare to move. She was afraid. Afraid that if she moved, this beautiful dream would be shattered. She didn't dare to cry out loud. However, her tears couldn't stop flowing. After a while, Gu Beiyue's chest was wet. Qin Min, don't cry, okay? Gu Beiyue was anxious. He was really anxious. He looked at Xiaoyao. Xiaoyao was crying and laughing at the same time. She didn't answer him and ran away. 10 years. This was the first time the Grand Tutor held Miss in his arms. There was no other reason other than that he couldn't bear to see her cry. 10 years. Finally, he didn't hear that rude. Finally, it wasn't an act. Xiaoyao clearly wanted to laugh, but she stood at the side and cried her eyes out. Gu Beiyue was completely flustered. If Qin Min continued crying like this, her eyes would be damaged. Qin Min, take it that I'm begging you. Don't cry, okay? It's all my fault. You blame me and scold me. Don't cry, okay? He had never tried to persuade anyone like this. Even when facing his master, he had never coaxed her like this. Qin Min, say something, okay? Helpless, Qin Min was indifferent. He could only lift her chin and force her to look up. When Qin Min saw Gu Beiyue, she became clear-headed. However, she wasn't completely clear-headed. She stopped crying and stared at him blankly. Gu Beiyue secretly heaved a sigh of relief. He said gently, "I'm fine now. Your acupuncture technique was right. After the vital energy became chaotic, it recovered on its own. I've endured it." "Was it a dream?" Qin Min muttered. Gu Beiyue was stunned. Then, he smiled helplessly. Just as he was about to answer, Qin Min gently caressed his cheek. Gu Beiyue was a little stiff, but Qin Min's caress was incomparably gentle. Her touch was so real. His face was as cold as his person. Qin Min knew that this wasn't a dream. It was real. She looked at him for a long time before she muttered, "Since you're fine, then I have to go." Gu Beiyue seemed to have forgotten about this. He was stunned for a moment. Unexpectedly, Qin Min suddenly hooked her arms around his neck, pressed him down, and kissed him on the lip. Gu Beiyue was surprised and even terrified. However, he didn't push her away. He only stiffened and didn't move. He let her linger on his lips and even let her invade his mouth and entangle him. Qin Min's kiss was jerky but intense. She kissed until tears streamed down her face, but she was incomparably emotional. She kissed until her liver and intestines were cut to pieces, but she was willing to do so. Gu Beiyue was still stiff, but after a while, his hands finally moved. One of his hands gently hugged Qin Min's waist, while the other slowly supported the back of Qin Min's head. He carefully tilted his head slightly, as if he was trying to find a comfortable angle. When he tilted his head, Qin Min sensed it. Qin Min stopped abruptly. She looked at him, her heart thumping wildly. She didn't think that she would be so impulsive. She also didn't think that he would respond to her. Oh God, what did she do? She looked at the man in front of her in panic. The man in her heart was like a god. For a moment, she didn't know what to do. He also looked at her. There was no emotion in his gentle eyes, except for a little helplessness. He leaned over and gently locked his lips with hers. It was jerky but also like he was testing her. The kiss was especially careful and gentle. Just like his character, this kiss was lingering and delicate. Would such a man really turn into a wolf one day? In the end, it was Gu Beiyue who ended the kiss. Qin Min completely lost control and all her strength. She laid weakly in Gu Beiyue's arms. Even if only death awaited her, she would be satisfied. Gu Beiyue gently wiped away the tears at the corner of her eyes and said mildly, "Qin Min, stay, okay?" Qin Min was really flattered and looked at him in disbelief. Although she was surprised, she couldn't help but ask, why? At least, there should be a reason. Chapter 1366. Qin Min wanted a reason? Gu Beiyue thought for a long time before saying, "I want to eat the longevity noodles you cook." What was the reason? Was it a confession? Was it a lover? Or a relative? Qin Min didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but that kiss was enough for her. Whether it was a lover or a relative, they were all his people. She choked with sobs and said, "Gu Beiyue, I'm willing to cook for you every year." Could this be considered her confession? None of this was important. Qin Min hugged Gu Beiyue tightly and buried her head in his chest, as if she wanted to confirm again whether this was a dream or reality. Little Shadow kept looking at his parents. When he saw his parents kissing, he blushed, but he also kept looking. If it was any other time, he would definitely cover his eyes. But this time, he kept smiling foolishly as he watched, smiling through his tears. When he saw his mother leave his father's embrace, Little Shadow dashed over and plunged into his father's embrace, wiping his snot and tears on his father's body. The greatest comfort for a child was not words, but a hug. A tight hug to let the child know that you're here. Gu Beiyue hugged Little Shadow tightly, and stroked his back silently. At this time, Little Thing, who had almost fainted from crying, also pounced over and rubbed against his young master's chest. Qin Min took Gu Beiyue's pulse seriously and found that the true qi in his body had calmed down smoothly. If he could master the secrets of cultivating true qi and control it well, his martial arts would definitely improve greatly. It must be known that this true qi was given to him by Han Chen and Long Fei Yi. It was something that could only be found by chance. That night, under Little Shadow's insistence, Gu Beiwei and Qin Min lay on the same bed. Little Shadow was lying between them, holding their hands and refusing to sleep. Qin Min slept innermost, Little Shadow slept in the middle, Gu Beiwei slept outside, and Little Thing stayed by Little Shadow's side, sticking close to its young master. Gu Beiwei and Qin Min couldn't slip away. It was only in the middle of the night when the Little Shadow finally fell asleep that they smiled at each other. Qin Min was about to get up when Gu Beiwei said calmly, "Go to sleep. You've been tired out these past few days." Qin Min was really tired. It wasn't just these few days. It could be said that he rarely had a good night's sleep in the past few years. "Go to sleep. You still need to rest. Peony and I will keep watch outside. Call us if you need anything." In the end, she was a woman who was easily satisfied. Perhaps she was extremely easy to satisfy when it came to him. Even if he asked her to stay, even if they had kissed, she still didn't dare to break their long-standing habit. Gu Beiwei saw how tired she looked and a look of pity flashed past his eyes. He said gently, "Sleep well. I'll watch over you." Qin Min did not lie down and insisted on getting off the bed. In the end, Gu Beiwei's 2 words made her obediently lie down beside the Little Shadow. Gu Beiwei said, "Be good." That night, Gu Beiwei watched over the Little Thing, watched over the Little Shadow, and watched over Qin Min. They passed the night peacefully. The next morning, Gu Beiwei wrote a letter and sent it out by Eagle. In his heart, he was naturally worried about Han Yunxi's 10-year promise. 2 days ago, the decisive battle at the Frozen Sea had already begun. He didn't know what the situation was now. Not only did Gu Beiwei send out the letter, but after breakfast, he also instructed Qin Min to bring the Little Shadow back to the imperial capital before he got up and rushed to the Frozen Sea. Qin Min saw Gu Beiwei's worry and her heart ached. He had just recovered from a serious illness, but he had to travel thousands of miles to the Frozen Sea. How could her heart not ache? However, she didn't stop him. Since the Shadow Clan could protect the imperial family with their lives, what was this little bit of worry? She didn't know how much she understood this man, but she knew that in his heart, he had Han Yunxi, the Long Fei Yi, the entire imperial family, and the entire Great Qin Empire. His heart was too big, so big that she couldn't do anything about it, nor did she dare to extravagantly ask to have it all for herself. She only wanted to have a place in his heart for her, the Little Shadow, and himself. "Daddy, I want to go too." The Little Shadow was jumping for joy. He hadn't seen the Crown Prince and Princess Yen for a long time, and he really missed them, especially Yen. If he hadn't been so focused on his father's illness these days, he definitely wouldn't have gotten used to not having Yen by his side. Gu Beiwei hesitated. At this moment, Peony hurried over. "Grand Tutor, there's a letter for you from Northernly. It must be news of victory." The Little Shadow was overjoyed. In his heart, whether it was the Emperor or the Empress, they would never lose. Gu Beiwei opened the letter, and his face instantly paled. He took a few steps back and almost fell. The thin letter kept trembling because of his trembling hands. Qin Min was alarmed. What kind of bad news could make a calm and steady person like Gu Beiwei so shocked? She hurriedly asked, "Something happened?" The Little Shadow directly snatched the letter. After reading it, he was so frightened that he threw it away. "It's fake. Daddy, this must be fake." The letter said that there was an unforeseen event in the Battle of the Ice Sea. The Emperor and Empress were frozen under the ice sea, and the ice sea became poisonous. Princess Yan's whereabouts were unknown to this day. After reading the letter, Qin Min's expression changed drastically. How could this be? She covered her mouth, not knowing what to say. This matter was too serious. Gu Beiwei supported himself on a nearby table to steady himself. Qin Min clearly saw him take deep breaths, and clearly saw the unconcealable grief in his eyes. He stared blankly into the distance, but didn't stay in a daze for long. He turned back to look at the little thing, who still didn't know what had happened, and suddenly said loudly, "Little thing, go! Quickly!" The little thing was originally lying lazily on the ground, but after hearing the young master's incomparably stern voice, it immediately jumped up and onto his shoulder. Gu Bei were left just like that without any explanation, and Qin Min and the little shadow couldn't speak to him either. "Mother, I'll go with Daddy. You go back to the capital first," the little shadow said seriously. "Be careful. Go quickly," Qin Min said anxiously. The little shadow immediately chased down the mountain, chasing after his daddy. Although he couldn't catch up to his daddy, he wouldn't lose him either. Gu Beiwe was indeed so anxious that he had lost his mind. It was only until a day later that he realized that the little shadow had been chasing after him. He stopped to wait for the little shadow, and after a short rest, he immediately set off again. When Gu Beiwe brought the little shadow and the little thing to the shore of the ice sea, it was already more than 10 days later. Gu and the rest had also been waiting by the shore for more than 10 days. Apart from Jin Zi, who had pulled himself together a little, everyone else was in despair. Jin Zi deployed some of his trusted aides to secretly search for Princess Yan's whereabouts on the southern shore of the ice sea, and even the nearby grasslands. Unfortunately, there was no news of Princess Yan after more than 10 days. The reason for the secret search was naturally due to Jin Zi's considerations. There were very few people who knew about the 10-year agreement between the Empress and the eldest miss of the Wolf sect. They were the only ones who knew that the Empress and the Emperor were frozen under the ice sea. This matter absolutely could not be leaked, or the Great Qin would fall into chaos. After all, the Crown Prince was only 10 years old. It was currently sunset, and the afterglow of the setting sun scattered on the black ice, illuminating the entire surface of the ice sea to be exceptionally sinister and terrifying. Gu, Ningjing, Tang Li, Mu Ling and Jin Zi were all squatting by the shore of the ice sea, silent. Whether it was waiting or accompanying, they were all thinking about Yen, Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi. Perhaps they were still stubbornly unwilling to believe the truth in front of them. Suddenly, Gu Beiyue's voice came from behind. Rui was the first to turn around, and everyone else followed suit. They saw Gu Beiyue standing behind them, with Lil Ying and Lil Thing by his side. Rui had stopped crying for several days, but when he saw the Grand Tutor, he couldn't help but burst into tears. He dashed over, and just as Gu Beiyue squatted down, he threw himself into Gu Beiyue's arms. Grand Tutor! The Grand Tutor was different to Rui. He was different from others, even from Gu. In the entire world, other than his father, only the Grand Tutor could give him a sense of security, and only the Grand Tutor could give him support. Han Yunxi had even been jealous about this, and asked Rui, "So in your heart, Mother is inferior to the Grand Tutor?" Rui was right. Mother is a woman, and Rui needs to protect Mother. I can't rely on Mother. The Grand Tutor is the same as Father. As long as the Grand Tutor is here, Rui won't be afraid even if the sky falls. Rui threw himself into Gu Beiyue's arms and started sobbing. He had shed many tears in the past few days, but he had never cried out loud like this. In the Grand Tutor's arms, he couldn't hold it in any longer. In the Grand Tutor's arms, he seemed to have returned to the safest embrace, his father's embrace. Gu and the rest came over, wanting to console Rui. Lil Ying gently stroked Rui's back, wanting to comfort him. However, Gu Beiyue motioned for them to keep quiet and back away. He picked up Rui and flew far away, sitting on a large rock. He didn't try to persuade him, and only hugged him tightly, saying gently, "Child, cry if you want. The Grand Tutor is here. Even if the sky falls, the Grand Tutor will hold it up for you." Rui kept crying, as if he wanted to cry out all the depression and grief he had been suppressing for days. In the end, he was tired from crying and fell into a deep sleep. That night, Gu Beiyue hugged Rui and let him sleep peacefully. Gu took off his outer robe and covered Rir with it before sitting down beside Gu Beiwe. Tang Li, Ningjing, Mu Ling and Jinzi also came over and sat around Gu Beiwe and Rir. Where's Xing? Gu Beiwe's voice was a little hoarse. He was in a hurry to find Yen, and went to the ice sea with Lil Thing. I couldn't stop them, Jinzi said. Gu Beiwe didn't say anything. He didn't have to worry about Lil Thing and Lil Shadow. Gu Beiwe and Gu Beiwe told him the details of the entire incident, while Jinzi recounted the results of the search over the past 10 days. Gu Beiwe listened carefully, his brows furrowing more and more. Compared to everyone else's grief, Gu Beiwe was very calm. Aside from the time he'd revealed a helpless expression on Boundless Mountain, he was as calm and rational as ever. Gu didn't say a word after telling them the whole story. He sat on the side and looked askance at Gu Beiwe. He really didn't understand how Gu Beiwe's heart worked. How could he still be so calm as to calm everyone down and analyze the situation? He said that the ice sea had turned into a poison sea and that the water of 10,000 poisons had no antidote. At the very least, Cloud Realm Continent and Profound Sky Continent were forever cut off from each other. The Poison Sea was the safest barrier in Cloud Realm Continent's northern borders. He said that the Emperor and Empress being sealed in ice and Princess Yan's disappearance couldn't be leaked. Preparations for the Crown Prince's ascension had to be made in secret. He said that the Emperor and Empress were still alive, so everyone had to pull themselves together and protect the Great Qin Empire until they broke through the ice and returned. He was very rational, but when Lil Thing brought him into the ice cave the next morning, he finally lost his cool. Chapter 1367. Lil Thing and Little Shadow searched the ice for an entire night but couldn't find any trace of Yen. Little Shadow almost went to the shores of the frozen sea to search for her on the mysterious continent. However, he held himself back in the end. He knew that his father wouldn't give up looking for Yen, and didn't want to cause trouble for him at this time. When he and Lil Thing returned, was already awake. His tears were still wet, but he was much stronger than before. Lil Thing transformed into a tall snow wolf and walked towards Ru. It crouched in front of Ru and rubbed its head against Ru's feet as if comforting him. Ru rubbed the wolf's head and immediately sat on its back. Gu Beiwe followed. Gu and Tang Li wanted to go as well, but they didn't fight with Gu Beiwe. They just waited quietly. The snow wolf carried Gu Beiwe and Ru across the blackened ice and headed straight for the center of the frozen sea. Last night, it had brought Little Shadow to that hole. Only Little Shadow knew that it had been wailing inside for a long time. The first thing Gu Beiwe noticed when they entered the hole was that the ice below was white. The frozen sea was covered in ice, and the poisoned area was only 3 feet below the surface. Although it was only 3 feet, it was enough to stop anyone on the mysterious continent. "Grand Tutor, my father and mother are here," Ruir said in a choked voice. Gu Beiwe looked back to see Ruir and the snow wolf hugging each other on a large piece of ice. He strode over and took a closer look. Although he couldn't see clearly, he could vaguely make out Han Yunshi and Long Fei Ye's faces and their tightly clasped hands. His heart skipped a beat and he hurriedly looked away. He didn't make a sound for a long time, only looking up and widening his eyes. He was quiet for a long time until Ruir called out timidly, "Grand Tutor." Only then did he turn back with a gentle and calm expression. He knelt down and pulled Ruir up from the ice, saying gently, "Don't be like this. Your parents won't bear to see you catch a cold. Be good, they're still alive. You know that." Ruir nodded seriously. He had felt his parents' chi the moment he came down. They were really cultivating, he was sure. At this moment, the snow wolf suddenly let out a low cry and crawled up. Gu Beiwe and Ruir looked over, only to see the snow wolf vanish into thin air. Both Gu Beiwe and Ruir gave a start, but Ruir quickly exclaimed, "Mother? Mother must have taken Lil Thing. It must. Mother knows that we're here, she knows that the little thing is here." You're here, Mother, you know that we're here. You know that, right? You and Father will be fine, right? Mother, can you please answer me? Yes, yes. Yes, I beg you. As soon as he spoke, the snow wolf appeared out of thin air. It had clearly been released from the poison storage space. Was pleasantly surprised as he pulled Gu Beiwe to tears and laughter. He was so excited that he was about to jump up. Grand Tutor, my mother can hear us. She answered me. She really did answer me. The snow wolf rubbed against the ice as if trying to tell Gu Beiwe and that Mama Yunshi wasn't dead and could sense them. Gu Beiwe knelt down and placed a hand on the ice, resting it on Long Fei Yi and Han Yunshi's interlocked fingers. Your Majesty, esteemed Empress, this subordinate has returned from the gates of hell. This subordinate will protect the Great Qin and assist the Crown Prince and Princess. When you return from the ice, I'll avenge blood. Enmity. Gu Beiwe's last 3 words were especially harsh, his gentle eyes flashing with a frightening viciousness. He wasn't sure if Han Yunshi didn't have the strength to put the poisoned ice back into the poisoned storage space, or if she didn't want to. But he was clear that the poisoned ice sea was the best way to protect the Great Qin Empire and buy time for revenge. No one from the mysterious continent could offend Cloud Realm Continent, while they could use Lilthing to sneak in. No matter whether the 3 clan heads spread the news of their invasion, the changes in the ice sea would definitely attract the attention of the mysterious continent. This sea of poison could help them block all of Xian Kong's troubles. Perhaps Han Yunshi could cultivate her 10th rank Phoenix energy and break out of the ice herself. Or perhaps they could only wait for Yin. As for the secrets of the ice crystals and whirlpools, they could only wait for Han Yunshi and Long Fei Yi to break out. No matter what, they were still alive. If they could protect Cloud Realm Continent's northern borders, he and would have nothing to worry about. After Gu Beiwe and left, Gu, Tangli, and the rest all told the Snow Wolf Camel and the others to visit Han Yunshi and the rest in the ice cave. Once they were done, they all left with red eyes. Some people's grief was written in their eyes, while others hid it in their hearts. Besides his silence in the ice cave, Gu Beiwe was as calm and rational as ever, decisive and resolute. He made a prompt decision and had Lilthing take Gu across the ice sea to the mysterious continent to find Yen. If Yen wasn't in the ice sea or the southern shores, she might be on the northern shores. There had to be a reason why the whirlpool had shown the image of Jinyang City. Gu hadn't spent the past few years in the mysterious continent for nothing. His business in medicinal ingredients had grown bigger and bigger. Not only was he familiar with the continent, but he also had many connections. He was the most suitable person to handle this matter. Immediately. Remember, find Su Xiaoyu as soon as possible. The wolf sect can't fall into anyone else's hands, Gu Beiwe said seriously. Han Xiang was dead, so Han Chen's barrier was most likely a dead one. The wolf sect no longer had a leader. As Han Chen's only disciple, Su Xiaoyu naturally had the right to compete for the position of sect master. Moreover, that girl's skills and personality made it possible for her to take over the wolf sect as well. No matter what, they had to protect the wolf sect. It was their most basic guarantee of military strength in the mysterious continent. After some hesitation, Gu walked to Gu Beiwe's side and murmured, "I'll find Ning Qing for help. How about it? Let him help find someone and guard against the 3 great clans?" Gu Beiwe had already guessed that Ning Qing was on the mysterious continent. When Ning Qing had used the pseudonym Ning Qing to warn Long Fei Yi about Lu Zheng's plan to smuggle salt, it meant that Ning Qing was most likely hiding in Wintercrow and working with Lu Zheng. Later, Lu Zheng had fled to the mysterious continent, and Jin Zi had taken over Wintercrow. Long Fei Yi had sent men to search the entire country but hadn't found Ning Qing. At that time, the 2 of them had guessed that Ning Qing had gone to the mysterious continent with Lu Zheng. Gu Beiwe was about to nod when Gu Qishao lowered his voice again. Ning Qing married the Shangguan clan's daughter of the first wife and founded the Xiankong Trade Consortium. He's rich and imposing, and relies on the fact that the Shangguan clan is a power in the south. It's easy to ask him to do things. Gu Beiwei was shocked. Really? Really? If we can find Su Xiaoyu to take over the wolf sect and join forces with the Shangguan clan, at least the south of the mysterious continent will be our territory. Gu's voice was full of ruthlessness. In his life, he'd never thought about fighting for anything other than his hatred for Medical City. Now, he wanted nothing more than to take over the entire mysterious continent to avenge Poison Girl, Long Fei Yi, and Ru'er Yen. He'd been on the mysterious continent for so long that he'd seen Ning Qing several times from afar. He just pretended not to know and didn't tell Long Fei Yi, nor did he disturb him. Ning Qing, Gu Beiwei muttered to himself. After a while, he told Gu Qishao, "Help me pass on a message to him. Just say, I've been preparing wine for him and His Highness the entire time." Only Gu Beiwei knew about the drinking contest between Long Fei Yi and Ning Qing. Long Fei Yi had told Gu Beiwei after Jin Zi took over Wintercrow. Even Han Yunxi didn't know about this. Gu knew that Ning Qing loved wine, so he didn't think too much about it and nodded. "All right, I'll definitely pass on the message." Little Shadow clenched his fist. Seeing that his seventh uncle was about to leave, he mustered his courage and said loudly, "Daddy, I want to go with seventh uncle to find Yen. Can I?" Before Gu Beiwei could say anything, Gu pulled Little Shadow over. "Of course! Nanshan, this is your duty. The Shadow Clan's duty." Gu Beiwei kept these words to himself and didn't tell Little Shadow. He nodded and said gently, "Listen to your seventh uncle. You must be mischievous." Little Shadow was overjoyed and ran over to Rui. "Your Highness, Shadow will do his best. You take care." Rui didn't say anything. He hugged Shadow tightly and let go immediately. After Gu and Little Shadow left, Gu Beiwei took Rui and everyone else to leave. Before they left, everyone looked towards the frozen sea at the same time, their hearts filled with pity. Mu Ling choked out, "With brother-in-law accompanying my sister, everyone can relax. They won't be lonely." Tang Li sniffled, but still managed to laugh. "Let's go. There's no point in us staying here. It's not like you don't know my brother. He won't appreciate it even if we stay here until we die. He only wants my sister-in-law to accompany him." Gu Beiwei thought of their tightly interlocked fingers, his heart filled with emotions. He whispered to Rui in his arms, "Let's go. Grand Tutor will accompany you." After returning to the capital, the first thing Gu Beiwei did was to find the tiger tally in Han Yunxi's hands and take control of the military. At the same time, he pretended to follow Long Fei Ye's imperial edict and replaced the Minister of Revenue with someone he absolutely trusted. Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi rushed to the promise of 10 years without informing anyone in the imperial court. Instead, they used the excuse of seclusion to practice martial arts as an excuse to leave the affairs of the imperial court to a few trusted ministers. Gu Beiwei continued to use this excuse until he made sufficient arrangements in the imperial court and had sufficient confidence to deal with the coup. Only then did he announce an imperial edict in the name of Long Fei Yi. The general content of this imperial edict was that Long Fei Yi would take Han Yunxi to live in seclusion in the mountains and pass on the throne to Crown Prince Xianyuan Ru. Grand Tutor Gu Beiwei would be appointed as regent and assist the Crown Prince in governing the country until the Crown Prince turned 16. When this imperial edict was announced, the entire Great Qin Empire was in an uproar. All the civil and military officials knelt in front of the Xianlong Palace for several days and nights, begging to see Long Fei Yi. Gu Beiwei did not stop them and let them kneel. Of course, there were many who suspected that something had happened to Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi and that he had no choice but to pass on the throne to the Crown Prince. Some even suspected Gu Beiwei. Gu Beiwei didn't pay any attention to the rumors. He controlled the Great Qin Empire's military and the Great Qin Empire's national treasury. He had long since made preparations to deal with a rebellion. Arguing was a waste of time. Those who believed him would naturally believe him. Those who did not believe him would not believe him no matter how much he explained. As for those who did not believe him, he did not waste his breath. Instead, he used enough confidence and capital to convince them. All these years, Gu Beiyue's assistance to Long Fei Yi had not been in vain. All these years, Gu Beiyue's dedication to the great Qin Empire had not been in vain. In this change of the throne, there were many who opposed it, but there were also many who believed in it. In just half a year, Gu Beiyue had firmly secured the position of regent with a gentle attitude and decisive method. It was because of his firm position that Ru'er could sit on the throne. Think about it, those who opposed it, those who said they wanted to see Long Fei Yi, did they really want to see Long Fei Yi? Or were they just using the excuse of wanting to see Long Fei Yi to rebel? Chapter 1368. In the midst of this revolution, Gu Beiyue secretly sent people to spread rumors about Long Fei and Han Yunxi's travels through the mountains and rivers. For example, some people said that they had seen Long Fei Yi and his wife, and some people said that they had been cured by Han Yunxi. Rumors were terrifying not only because they could distort truth, but because they could also cause people to spread false information. As soon as Gu Beiyue spread these rumors, there were many different versions of Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi. As time passed, most people started to believe that Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi were in some corner of Great Qin. It had to be said that these rumors, in a certain sense, had a shocking effect on some of the restless people in the court. With Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi still around, those people naturally didn't dare to be too impudent. Half a year had passed, and Gu and the Little Shadow had gone back and forth between the mysterious Sky Continent and the Cloud Realm many times, but they still hadn't brought back any news about Yen Er. However, Gu had already contacted Ning Qing and told Ning Qing everything. He had also found Xiao Yu'er. After hearing about this, Xiao Yu'er, who was still training, immediately rushed back to the wolf sect. She used a duel to kill a few of Han Xiang's subordinates and took out Han Chen's command medallion, announcing that she would temporarily take over the wolf sect. Even though they had been searching for Yen Er for half a year without any results, Ning Qing and Su Xiaoyu didn't give up and continued to secretly ask about her. After stabilizing Great Qin's situation, Gu Beiyue personally went to the mysterious continent and secretly met with Gu, Ning Qing, and Su Xiaoyu. The four of them talked for a day and a night. Half a year later, Gu Nanchen, Jin Ling, and Tang Hongdou were secretly sent to the mysterious continent. As for where they were sent and what they were going to do, that was a secret. Both Shang'er and the Shangguan clans Shangguan Zhe knew Ning Qing's identity. In order to deceive the public, Ning Qing's son, Ning Yuan, was given the Shangguan family's surname, Shangguan Ningyuan, and stayed in the Shangguan family to practice martial arts. In the end, Ning Qing still had his guard up. He didn't tell the Shangguan clan master the truth about the ice sea. He only found an excuse to ask about the ice seal cultivation. In the north of the mysterious continent, the Shui clan cultivated their qi by sealing themselves in ice. The process of using one's true qi to defend against the cold was a form of cultivation. When Ning Qing found out about this, he was so excited that he couldn't sleep the whole night. Since that was the case, then Rui'er's senses were right. Long Fei and Han Yunxi hadn't lost their lives, but were using the chance to cultivate instead. Rui'er remained in the Great Qin Palace, learning how to manage court affairs while diligently practicing his martial arts. Gu Beiyue had set up a trap for both revenge and conquest of the mysterious continent. He was helping Rui'er, Long Fei Yi, and Han Yunxi at the same time. After sending them off, Rui'er stood on the southern shores of the Ice Sea and shouted, "My Xianyuan imperial clan will one day flatten the mysterious continent." Now that the trap was set, all that was left was to wait and work hard. Day after day passed without any news of Yen. Still, no one believed that she was dead. According to Little Shadow's words, one had to be strong in life and see the corpse in death. The search had never stopped. Gu and Lil Thing became the key link between the two sides. News of Gu Beiwei and Ru'er Tangli, Ning Jing, Jin Zi, and Mu Ling were all brought to the children through Gu. The children's letters were also brought back to Cloud Realm Continent through Gu. After a year of peace, the golden-eyed snow mastiffs all returned, but none of them dared to step foot into the waters. They could tell that the black ice was poisonous. When they saw Gu Qishao, they still wanted to surround and attack him, but as soon as they saw the tall and fierce snow wolf behind him, they all submitted to Gu Qishao. Gu sat by the shore as a large group of golden-eyed snow mastiffs surrounded him. At the very least, they made him look less lonely. Gu and Lil Thing often went into the ice cave to keep Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi company. He would often sit by Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi's side for an entire night to talk about the children, his and Gu Beiyue's plans, the state of affairs in the mysterious continent, and the great Qin nation. He knew that Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi could sense his and Lil Thing's presence, but he wasn't sure if the Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi could hear him. Thus he told them over and over again. Until one day, when he repeated the same thing 5 times, the snow wolf that was crouching beside him to keep him warm suddenly disappeared into thin air. He gave a start before rejoicing. "Poison Lass, is that you? You took Lil Thing away? You can hear me, can't you?" At these words, the snow wolf appeared out of thin air again. Gu was even more certain that Poison Lass was replying to him. "Thus," he added, "Poison Lass, if you can hear me, then take Lil Thing away." Sure enough, as soon as he finished speaking, the snow wolf disappeared again. Gu was pleasantly surprised. He suddenly realized that Poison Lass had a very good way of communicating with him. Thus, he kept asking questions while the snow wolf kept appearing and disappearing. In the end, the snow wolf gave a dissatisfied howl before Han Yunxi didn't put it back into the poison storage space. The snow wolf hadn't fully recovered yet, so it could stay in its wolf form for a long time. Still, it couldn't communicate with Mama Yunxi's consciousness. Even so, it could still sense Mama Yunxi's emotions. Mama Yunxi was clearly making Gu nag, but Gu was having fun on his own. Now she was dragging him down with her, seriously. He'd repeated the same thing 5 times. It was hard to tell what Papa Long was feeling right now. Gu saw that the snow wolf was unhappy and assumed that Poison Lass was tired. He didn't ask any more questions, but hugged the snow wolf and fell asleep in satisfaction. From then on, Gu had one more thing to do besides dealing in medicinal ingredients and being a messenger. That was to communicate with Poison Lass from time to time. Later on, he even brought Ru'er and Gu Beiwei over. Ru'er wished he could stay in the ice cave forever, but he knew the burden on his shoulders was heavy. He didn't dare disturb his father and mother's cultivation, so he could only come once every 2 months. After Gu Beiwei was made Prince Regent, he moved out of the Grand Tutor's estate to live in the palace. After Little Shadow was secretly sent to the mysterious continent, only Qin Min was left by Gu Beiyue's side. Over the past few days, Gu Beiyue had been busy rushing about. Even though Qin Min was by his side, chances to see him were few and far between. At the end of the year, Gu Beiyue finally had a few days of leisure. He personally wrote a letter to invite Tang Li, Ning Jing, Jin Zi, and Mu Ling to the palace to spend the new year with Ru'er. At first, Gu Beiyue had only planned to send Ru'er and a few of his confidants to the mysterious continent. However, Tang Li and the others took the initiative to send Tang Hongdou and Ling so Gu Beiyue had no choice but to agree. It was impossible not to miss the children during the new year. However, Tang Li and the others didn't mention anything about bringing the children back. After all, the children were going to the mysterious continent to change their names and learn martial arts. They were going there for revenge and to follow Ru'er to conquer the mysterious continent in the future. How could they come back so easily? Qin Min missed Little Shadow, but also didn't dare to ask to see her. On New Year's Eve, Qin Min personally cooked a table of dishes. Tang Li and the others also came, but Rui'er was nowhere to be seen. In the end, Gu Beiwei found a letter in Rui'er's room. Rui'er, on the other hand, had gone to the Ice Sea to accompany his parents. He had even prepared red packets for everyone in the name of his parent. Gu Beiwei sighed. That's good too. After Rui'er left, Gu Beiwei and the other 6 adults spent the new year together. After the reunion dinner, everyone chatted for a while before returning to their rooms. Qin Min sat in the courtyard and couldn't help but miss Little Shadow. She wondered how the child was doing on the mysterious continent. Did she still miss Yen'er? Did she still secretly cry? She sat for a while before getting up to return to her room. She lived in the main room while Gu Beiwei lived in the side hall of the mysterious dragon palace most of the time. He would occasionally come for dinner, but never stayed overnight. She thought that Gu Beiwei had left, but just as she was about to enter the room, she saw Gu Beiwei walk out. "It's so late, why aren't you?" She was about to speak when there was a loud bang behind her. She subconsciously looked back and saw that in the dark night sky, gorgeous fireworks were blooming. It was extremely beautiful. Fireworks. She walked out and stood under the fireworks in the sky, looking up at the sky. It was as if she had returned to that night in Ningzhou City. That night, for the first time, she realized that she couldn't bear to leave him. She looked back at Gu Beiwei and smiled gently. Gu Beiwei grinned and said, "Keep the money well." Qin Min didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She didn't expect him to still remember after so many years. She walked over and said, "Gu Beiwei, I don't want the money. Stay and spend the new year with me, okay?" It was the new year. She couldn't bear to spend it alone, and she couldn't bear to let him spend it alone in the side chamber. She had chess in her room, and she could play chess with him. A game of chess was enough to pass the night. She was about to say something, but unexpectedly, Gu Beiwei agreed. "Okay, I'll accompany you." She was overjoyed. She wanted to ask for a bargaining chip, but Gu Beiwei suddenly carried her in his arms and turned to walk into the room. Gu Beiwei, could it be that he had misunderstood? Did he think that she wanted to spend the night with him? Her heart started to pound. She could have explained, but she didn't want to. Gu Beiwei had indeed misunderstood Qin Min's intentions. He set her down on the bed and sat by her side to look at her. Qin Min's heart raced and her face turned red. But even so, she still asked, "Gu Beiwei, will you not reject anything that I ask for?" If she didn't say it, he would never do it. But if she said it, he would immediately satisfy her. Was it like this? Gu Beiwei didn't answer and sealed her lips with a kiss. His kiss was as gentle as ever. His actions were as gentle as his kiss, and as awkward. He was obviously awkward, but when his hands covered her most sensitive and prideful part, she couldn't take it and trembled all over. She even curled up. She really couldn't take it. Not for anything else, but because it was him. It was Gu Beiwei. Because it was him, she was completely immersed in it. Because it was him, she didn't ask for any more answers. Because it was him, she was trembling the entire time. It was like a dream, and she couldn't believe it. Gu Beiwei, oh Gu Beiwei, even if you pampered me 100 times, I would still be nervous, trembling, and in disbelief. Even if we were one, I still couldn't get close to you. That night, Qin Min curled up in Gu Beiwei's arms and fell into a deep sleep. Gu Beiwei didn't answer her question either. However, from that night onwards, Qin Min had truly become Gu Beiwei's wife. This was an indisputable fact. On New Year's Eve, some people were lively, some were quiet, some were warm, and some were cold. In the Gu family's residence in Jinyang City on the mysterious continent, Gu Fian, who had fallen into a coma a year ago, suddenly woke up. Gu Fian was the granddaughter of the Gu family. She was exceptionally talented, and the elders in the family liked her since she was young. The Gu family and the Qi family had been on good terms for generations, and Gu Fian was also engaged to the Qi family's eldest grandson, Qi Yu. A year ago, Gu Fian had been unconscious ever since she was rescued after falling into the water. Speaking of falling into the water, it was a little strange. Gu Fian was originally familiar with the water, but for some reason, she sank after falling into the water that day. After the servants rescued her, the maidservant at the side noticed that Gu Fian's clothes were different from the clothes she was wearing before she fell into the water. However, no one believed that the clothes were different. The maidservant was afraid of causing trouble, so she didn't dare to say anything else. She just took it that she had admitted her mistake. Gu Fian was unconscious, and the Gu family had searched all over for famous doctors, but to no avail. After the new year, the Gu family had planned to give up on this granddaughter and send her to the countryside. Who knew that she would wake up on New Year's Eve? Gu Fian. Gu Fian. Who was she? Chapter 1369. It was New Year's Eve. Fireworks were everywhere, and it was extremely lively. The great Qin Imperial Palace was also decorated with lanterns and colored banners, and fireworks were everywhere. After Long Fei Yi, his wife, and their children left, the huge imperial palace was no longer quiet, but cold and cheerless. Fortunately, Gu Beiyue was considerate and had already arranged everything. Even though Ru had already prepared the red packets that should be given out before leaving, Gu Beiyue still did some things for Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi. For example, he used Long Fei Ye's name to give out red packets to the court officials and soldiers at the border. In Han Yunxi's name, he prepared red packets for the servants in the imperial palace and the madams of the imperial capital, and ordered them to be sent out on the first day of the new year. For example, in Han Yunxi's name, he ordered people to send a bunch of things from the south into the imperial palace, such as paper lanterns, fresh flowers, and many fireworks to show the heart's shadow. It was because of this that the imperial palace was so lively tonight. It was also because of this that even the servants in the imperial palace suspected that the retired emperor and empress dowager had already secretly returned to the imperial palace, let alone the people outside the imperial palace. At this time, it was getting closer and closer to midnight, and a new year was about to begin. The sound of firecrackers outside rose and fell, and it was getting more and more lively. Meanwhile, Qin Min was curled up in Gu Beiyue's arms, sleeping peacefully. Perhaps she was tired from her first taste of human affairs, or perhaps the embrace was too warm, but no matter how loud the firecrackers were, they did not wake her up. On the contrary, Gu Beiyue was still awake. He had one hand on Qin Min's pillow, and the other hand behind his head. His eyes were wide open, and no one knew what he was thinking. After a long silence, he sighed softly. A year is coming to an end, and a person who has not returned for thousands of miles. His originally calm eyes were filled with tears. He was about to get up when Qin Min muttered a few words. It sounded like she was talking in her sleep, but he could not tell what she was saying. He turned to look, and Qin Min moved. She rubbed against him a few times and reached out to hug him. He seemed to be a little uncomfortable, but the corners of his mouth quickly turned up into a faint smile. It was 3 parts helplessness and 7 parts affection. He couldn't move, so he stopped moving. He only carefully brushed away the strands of hair that had fallen on her face, without any intention of getting up. He was sleepless. Listening to the liveliness in the palace, he could not sleep. At this moment, Tang Li and Ning Jing, as well as Jin Zi and Mu Linger, who were staying in the palace for the night, were still awake. Tang Li and Ning Jing sat on the threshold. Ning Jing was slowly chewing the red bean porridge that Tang Li had personally cooked for her. Tang Li tilted his head and watched her eat. The smile on his face was even sweeter than the red bean porridge. Ning Jing ate a few mouthfuls and then fed a mouthful to Tang Li. Tang Li smiled even more sweetly. "Madam, you've improved." Ning Jing asked expressionlessly, "What do you mean?" Tang Li smiled and said, "You know your husband's hard work and know how to reward your husband." Ning Jing said mildly, Tang isn't here, so she's not used to not being able to feed her. I can only make do and feed you to comfort this madam's longing for her daughter." Tang Li was especially disdainful. My daughter has been eating by herself since she was 3 years old and never let anyone feed her. Ningjing, you can't slander her behind her back when she's not here. Ningjing muttered in her heart, you're talking so much nonsense just to eat porridge. She rolled her eyes at Tang Li unhappily and said coldly, I can't finish it. Do you want to eat? Tang Li blurted out, your appetite is so big. You can obviously finish a big bowl. Ningjing's expression stiffened when she heard this, but she quickly put on a fake smile. I'm not eating. Shit. Thus, the red bean porridge, that was about to reach Tang Li's mouth, was immediately taken back by Ningjing, and she ate it in one big bite. The originally quiet and sweet scene suddenly changed. Ningjing no longer chewed slowly and ate the rest of the red bean porridge in big mouthfuls. Tang Li couldn't even see it, let alone eat it. Ningjing finished eating and threw the bowl and chopsticks into Tang Li's hands. Wash up and sleep. She stretched lazily and went into the room. Tang Li stared at the bowl and chopsticks in his hands for a long time before he muttered to himself, wash up and sleep? Since when did wash up and sleep mean this? Tang Li naturally handed the bowl and chopsticks to the servants. When he returned to the room, he saw that Ningjing wasn't sleeping but was packing her luggage. Tang Li hurried over and asked with a smile, are you really angry? Ali, let's go to the IC too, Ningjing said seriously. In the end, she still missed her daughter. Perhaps she could meet Gu at the IC and ask about Tang Tang's recent situation. Although Tang Tang and the other two had changed their names and concealed their identities after being sent to the mysterious continent, Gu still reported the children's safety several times in the past year so that they could rest assured. Tang Li stopped smiling and said indifferently, okay, we can't make it in time for New Year's Eve, but we should still be able to meet Shao Qi at the Lantern Festival. Gu and the little thing stayed on the IC coast and acted as messengers between the two continents. With his personality, he would definitely bother Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi during festivals. He would definitely be at the IC on New Year's Eve and the Lantern Festival. Tang Li and Ningjing left as soon as they said they would. They did not bid farewell to Gu Beiwei in person but left a note. Tang Li even specially left a red packet for Little Shadow so that Qin Min could accept it on her behalf. However, not long after Tang Li and Ningjing left the palace, they heard a man and a woman quarreling. The voice was very familiar to them. The woman angrily questioned, will it kill you to walk slower? Cold, the man's tone was. You're the one who can't walk fast, yet you still complain that I'm slow. The woman continued, you can take 3 steps faster than me in 1 step, yet you still have the nerve to complain that I'm slow? The man said, you're the one who's short, yet you still have the nerve to complain that my legs are long? The woman seemed to be angry, and did not say anything for a long time. Tang Li and Ningjing looked at each other suspiciously and hurriedly led their horses out of the alley. Sure enough, they saw 2 familiar figures not far in front of them. If these two were not Mu Ling and Jin Zi, who else could they be? Even though the two were quarreling fiercely, Jin Zi still held tightly onto Mu Ling's hand and did not let go. Ningjing looked at the tightly clasped hands and could not help but burst out laughing. Mu Ling was indeed a little short while Jin Zi was tall. When Jin Zi took a stride with his long legs, Mu Ling really had to take 3 steps to catch up. Jin Zi held Mu Ling's hand as they walked. One could imagine how hard it was for Mu Ling to keep up. Hearing the movement behind them, Jin Zi and Mu Ling turned back at the same time. What a coincidence, are you leaving too? Ningjing asked. Sister Jing, we're going to the IC. Are you coming? Mu Ling quickly replied. If it were not for the new year with Rui she and Jin Zi would have already gone to the IC. Who knew that Rui would run to the IC when they were heading south? She missed her Lil Ling, her sister and brother-in-law, and also missed Chi brother and the little thing. After dinner, she wanted to ask Big Sister Jing if she wanted to go with them, but she was stopped by Jin Zi. Jin Zi said something about the fireworks in the city on New Year's Eve and wanted to take a walk with her to see the fireworks all the way to the city gate. She must have been out of her mind back then to believe his nonsense. Just based on the height difference between the two, it was destined that they would not be able to take a walk happily in this lifetime. We're also going to the ice sea. One before Ning Jing could finish, Tang Li interrupted. We're also going to the ice sea. We'll leave first. You guys, continue. That Brother Jin's legs are really long. Not only did he not persuade them to leave during the new year, he even let them continue to quarrel. Other than Tang Li, there was no one else. Just like that, Tang Li's cheap words made the situation awkward. No one said anything. Tang Li took this opportunity to immediately get on the horse, and pulled Ning Jing up as well, hugging her tightly. See you at the ice sea. Tang Li cracked his whip and left with his wife. Lu Jinzi and Mu Ling stood in the same spot, looking at each other speechlessly. What do you mean by that? Ning Jing asked angrily. The thing she regretted the most now was that she did not ask Han Yunshi for some poison to hide. When necessary, she could poison Tang Li to make him mute. Tang Li smiled but did not answer. He cracked his whip a few more times to make the horse run faster. Tang Li, stop. Wait for them. Ning Jing pulled on the reins. Tang Li lowered his head and rested his chin on her shoulder. He said gently, wait for them at the city gates. Ning Jing, I won't say anything. You don't say anything either, okay? Ning Jing really did not know what Tang Li wanted to do, but she was still defeated by his gentle voice. She always found him noisy and talkative, but when he was gentle, she would never get tired of hearing his deep and magnetic voice. Ning Jing really did not say anything. She was quiet and let Tang Li hug her tightly from behind. Tang Li also stopped cracking his whip and allowed the horse to walk slowly under the sky full of fireworks. Finally, Ning Jing noticed the sound of firecrackers that had been bustling around them for a long time. She subconsciously looked up and saw the sky full of fireworks blooming in the night sky. She murmured, so beautiful. Tang Li did not look at the fireworks. To him, it was not the fireworks that were beautiful, but the time. This moment was so beautiful. At this moment, Jin Zi had already let go of Mu Linger's hand. He said coldly, forget it, I won't walk with you in the future. Mu Linger felt wronged and almost cried. Unexpectedly, Jin Zi squatted down and said in a cold tone, I can't amputate your long legs. I'll carry you in the future, okay? Mu Linger was stunned. She immediately pounced over and climbed onto Jin Zi's back. She hugged his neck tightly. That's great. You can't go back on your word. You're a dog if you go back on your word. Jin Zi rolled his eyes and stood up. He did not want to say anything, but after weighing Mu Linger, he could not help but say, you've lost weight. From tomorrow onwards, add half a bowl of rice for every meal. Do you think I'm a pig? Mu Linger retorted. Even a pig can walk faster than you, Jin Zi said coldly. Are you done yet? Mu Linger was angry again. Unexpectedly, Jin Zi replied, I'm not done yet. What do you want? Mu Linger stopped hugging Jin Zi's neck. Instead, she strangled him. Jin Zi said, nothing. I just like to quarrel with you. Mu Linger was stunned, but she quickly pinched him hard. Lame. Jin Zi did not say anything. He lowered his head and looked at the road. However, the corners of his mouth silently curled up into a beautiful arc. After a moment of silence, Mu Linger looked up at the fireworks in the sky and muttered, swear that you'll give in to me when we quarrel in the future. Otherwise, I won't quarrel with you anymore. Jin Zi almost laughed out loud, but he held it in and replied coldly, okay, then we won't quarrel in the future. You! Mu Linger finally realized that she had been tricked. Jin Zi finally could not hold it in anymore and laughed out loud. Chapter 1370. Jin Zi and Mu Linger saw Tang Li and Ning Jing at the city gate. The husband and wife went north together. Ru'er rushed for several days and finally arrived at the ice coast. On New Year's Eve, there was no moon. On the ice coast, desolate and cold, there was no sign of human habitation. This was like a dark world. No matter which direction you look, it was all black. The sky was black and the earth was black, there was no end to it. It was dark and silent. Besides the whistling of the north wind, there was no other sound to be heard. Xian Yuan Rui stood on the ice coast, his back straight, standing like a pine tree. He was only 20 years old, but he was a head taller than his peers. Because he practiced martial arts all year round, his body was more robust and refined than his peers. He wore a brocade white casual outfit, a jade pendant hanging from his waist, and a luxurious purple fox fur cloak draped over his shoulders. The calmness and arrogance between his eyebrows were exactly the same as the long fei yi when he was young. He had one hand behind his back and the other hand holding a lantern. In this darkness, there was only a small light in his hand. Although this light was small, the wind could not blow it out. Although this light could not illuminate a corner of the ice sea, it could illuminate his dark and deep eyes, letting him see the long road ahead. Only 1 year. Today's Xian Yuan Rui was no longer the Xian Yuan Rui of the past. 2 years, 3 years, even 10 years later Xian Yuan Rui? Xian Yuan Rui pondered. At this time, there was also a light in the darkness ahead. He looked over. His cold eyebrows finally warmed a little. Perhaps he was much luckier than his father. No one had ever been able to warm Imperial Father's cold heart until Imperial Mother's late arrival. And he had a grand tutor, a godfather, Li Shu and Jin Shu. Also, his father left him a group of advisors, a group of loyal officials, and his mother left him a lot of connections. His heart could always be warmed. His road would not be so lonely. That light was getting closer and brighter. He saw a tall and proud snow wolf carrying a red-clothed man galloping over. On the snow wolf's back was a wide chair covered in several layers of fox fur. 10 large red flags were placed on 3 sides of the chair, and at the end of each chess piece was a large red lantern. Along with the snow wolf's hijacking, facing the wind, the red flag fluttered, the lantern swayed. This scene was really intoxicating. People who didn't know from afar would mistake the snow wolf for a monster. However, Xian Yuan Rui recognized the snow wolf and his godfather Gu at a glance. His face, which had been cold for the past few days, unconsciously blossomed into a long-lost smile. He shouted, "Godfather, little thing!" Gu rode the snow wolf, awe-inspiring, handsome and awe-inspiring. As soon as he heard Ruer's shout, he immediately jumped down from the comfortable and warm fox fur chair and landed on the little thing's back. He grabbed the little thing's ear and signaled it to stop. Unfortunately, the usually obedient little thing tossed Gu Qishao to the back of its head as soon as it saw its little master. Not only did it ignore Gu Qishao's orders, it even shook violently until Gu Qishao almost fell off its back. It galloped over, somewhat unable to stop. It pounced on the little master and directly threw the little master to the ground. Gu, who was standing on its back, suddenly flew forward. Xian Yuan Rui hugged the little thing. One person and one beast rolled on the snow, completely ignoring Gu. As soon as Gu fell on the snow, the golden eyes snow mastiffs lurking around all came out, surrounding him from all directions. 1 year off. For the whole year, this group of golden eyes snow mastiffs could not find a chance to besiege Gu. Not for anything else, but because every time Gu sat on the snow wolf's back, majestic and awe-inspiring, the golden eyes snow mastiffs did not dare to approach the snow wolf. They could only stare blankly at Gu, who, as usual, frequently came and went on both sides of the ice sea. Now the opportunity finally came. Gu looked around, immediately climbed up and pulled out his dagger. Almost at the same time, all the golden eyes snow mastiffs rushed over, instantly submerging Gu's figure. After a year, the battle between humans and dogs could be said to be fierce. Although it took some time, Gu Qishao still won in the end. By the time he stood up from the pack of golden-eyed snow mastiffs, he saw Ruer and Lil Thing sitting by the shore, looking at him with interest. He leisurely tidied up his clothes and hairstyle, then walked over and squeezed a seat between Ruer and the little thing. Not to mention, Gu's martial arts had improved. Fighting with a group of golden eyes snow mastiffs, he could actually come out unscathed. He asked, "Ruer, are you hungry?" Xianyuan Rui replied, "I don't eat dog meat." Gu grabbed the little thing and continued to ask, "Do you eat wolf meat?" Before Ruer could answer, Gu shouted at the little thing, "If you throw me out again, I'll kill you and feed you to the dogs." Ruer's mouth twitched a few times, suddenly not knowing how to answer. When the little thing turned into a snow wolf, its temper also changed. It was no longer a cute and stupid mouse, but a serious and cold wolf. It glanced at Gu from above, disdaining to pay attention to him. If not for the mission, it would not have allowed Gu to put so many flags on it, flaunting across the ice sea. "Godfather, I came to accompany my parents for the new year," Xianyuan Rui said seriously. Gu instantly became serious. He lowered his long and narrow eyes, faintly saying, "Ruer, I'm sorry, Godfather still hasn't found Yenner." "No news is good news," Xianyuan Rui said faintly. He would rather his sister's whereabouts be unknown than her life or death unknown. There must be a reason why Jinyang City appeared in the whirlpool. After the new year, Godfather will go to Jinyang City and search from house to house. Even if you have to dig 3 feet into the ground, you must find her, Gu said seriously. Ruer hated that he couldn't find her himself, but he couldn't. He had too many things to do. Although the Great Qin court wasn't a mess, he couldn't throw everything to the Grand Tutor and let the Grand Tutor bear the infamy of usurping the throne. Xianyuan Rui flew onto the snow wolf's back and was about to leave when Gu stopped him. He took out a cloak from the box behind the chair to wrap Ruer up. "In the middle of winter, the ice sea is especially cold," he said seriously. "I have qi to protect my body, I'm not afraid of the cold." Xianyuan Rui took off his own cloak. "Godfather, put it on, quick! What's with all the nonsense? He's used to going back and forth. It's only half the journey, I won't die from the cold." Gu said impatiently, "If your parents were here, they might even wrap you in 4 or 5 cloaks." Ruer wanted to decline, but seeing his godfather's gloomy face, he could only give up. Since young, how could he not know his godfather's temper? In this year, the Grand Tutor taught him to grow up, taught him to shoulder many things on his own. However, when he was beside his godfather, he suddenly felt that he was back to a year ago, a child again. Ruer's eyes were a little wet. Without saying anything, he wrapped the 2 cloaks tightly and sat on the little thing's back. Gu was satisfied. He also flew up and sat beside Ruer, holding him in his arms. Into the ice sea. Ruer found that his godfather really wasn't afraid of the cold. In this year, his godfather went to the ice sea several times and was really used to it. Many times being used to it wasn't a terrible thing, but a heart-wrenching thing. "Godfather," Ruer whispered. "What's wrong?" Gu asked curiously. "It's good to have you." Ruer's voice was still very soft, but Gu heard it clearly. He laughed. "Silly child." It was almost dawn when Gu and Ruer arrived at the ice cave. Mystic ice seemed to be able to freeze everything, including time. Nothing had changed here. Han Yunxi was submerged in the frozen waters of the pond, while Long Fei lay sprawled beside her. The two of them were still holding hands as they stared at each other. Ning Qing had actually arrived long ago and was sitting at the side. When he saw Ruer, he immediately stood up and bowed. "Your Highness." Even though Ruer was already the young emperor in the Great Qin, in everyone's hearts, he was still the heir to the empire, and Long Fei Yi was still the master of the empire. "Uncle Cheng, no need to be so courteous," Ruer said seriously. He sat down beside his parents and touched the mystic ice on them. Before he could speak, the little thing beside him suddenly disappeared. Without a doubt, Han Yunxi had put the little thing into her poison storage space. She and Long Fei Yi could hear everyone's voices. They knew Ruer was here. Ruer was so happy that tears were about to fall, but he was still strong. He didn't care about the others and just sat down to talk with his parents. He talked about many things. When the Great Chain was founded, he talked about the mysterious continent. He talked about his longing and everyone's longing. He talked about his sadness and his happiness. In short, whether his parents knew about it or not, he talked about it. In fact, he didn't have to go through the little thing. As he spoke, he could feel the intense changes in his father and mother's true chi. His parents were responding to him in this way. He even found that their chi was much stronger than a year ago, and there were even signs of advancement. He had to admit that this not only comforted him, but also encouraged him. Ruer, who had always been a man of few words, had become a chatterbox. Gu had already gone to sit beside Ningqing. Gu had brought Ningqing over first before picking up Ruer. He knew that Ruer would definitely come tonight. "Hey, why aren't you going back to warm your wife's bed? Why are you sitting here like an idiot?" Gu asked suspiciously. Since he dared to offend Long Feiyi, Gu and Ningqing got along very well. "Why aren't you looking for a woman to warm your bed? What are you doing here?" Ningqing asked in return. Gu laughed. "I don't want anyone else but Poison Girl." Ningqing frowned. "What did you say?" Not only did Gu not say it out loud, he even lowered his voice. "I don't want anyone else but Poison Girl." Ningqing looked at him meaningfully and didn't say anything else. Instead, he threw a bunch of fireworks to Ruer and said loudly, "Your Highness, let your ears rest. Your Highness the Crown Prince, let your parents' ears rest. Your godfather has already annoyed them to the point of going crazy." Ruer had said enough. He didn't want to repeat the same thing over and over again like his godfather. He picked up the fireworks and lit them all up from the lantern his godfather had specially made. Following the popping sounds, the fireworks flew up and out of the ice cave. They bloomed in brilliant colors in the sky above the ice sea, breaking the darkness and silence of the ice sea. Ningqing and Gu Qishao both rose to their feet and found the fireworks especially beautiful. Long Feiyi and Han Yunxi couldn't see the fireworks. Perhaps they were already satisfied to hear Ruer's voice on New Year's Eve. At this moment, the two of them had fainted because they had used too much true chi to interact with Ruer. Although they were frozen, they weren't idle at all. No one in the world wanted to break out of the ice more than they did. Using true chi to protect their bodies from the cold while simultaneously cultivating was a very taxing task. Fainting was actually a common occurrence. When she was in a coma, Han Yunxi would always have a dream. In the dream, Long Feiyi was there. Long Feiyi also had the same dream. However, they didn't know that the other party was having the same dream. Even if they knew, they might not be able to tell whose dream it was. What was the point of being so clear? There was no need to differentiate between them. In the dream, Han Yunxi returned to the hospital and stood in front of Mr. Li. Unlike the first time she had this dream, she was nervous, afraid, and sad. At this moment, she only felt heartache for Mr. Li. She said, "Long Feiyi, I'll allow you to cut the queue. No matter which lifetime, no matter how late you are, I'll allow you to cut the queue." Long Feiyi smiled. No matter which lifetime, I want you to have an empty spot. I don't want an exception. I want to be exclusive." Their fingers intertwined as the two dreams intertwined. Some people were destined to be together. Even in dreams, they could be together. New Year's Eve special feature. I wish everyone a safe and healthy New Year, and hope that everything goes smoothly. Chapter 1371. Bang! Suddenly, a purple firework bloomed above the frozen sea. The Tongning couple and Jin Ling couple arrived at the north shore of the frozen sea at the same time. They were the ones who sent out the signal. They were waiting for the snow wolf to pick them up. They wanted to see Long Feiyi and Han Yunxi, as well as their child. They had missed the reunion night on New Year's Eve, so they couldn't miss the Lantern Festival. Not long after the signal was sent out, a huge white shadow appeared in the darkness in front of them. Gradually, it got closer and clearer. It was Lil Thing. Lil Thing, who had transformed into a snow wolf, was tall and mighty. It ran over from afar like an ancient mythical beast descending from the sky. Of course, only when Gu Qishao wasn't riding it did it look so dignified and awe-inspiring. If Gu Qishao wanted to use it as a mount, he'd make it look all gaudy. Putting aside everything else, it was a must to have a big throne on its back. Mu Ling'er muttered, "That's strange. Where's Qi brother?" Tang Li glanced at her and said, "Your Qi brother will definitely be with my sister-in-law. Don't think about him." As soon as he said this, Ning Jing stepped on Tang Li's foot without batting an eyelid. Then, she continued to step on it with all her might. Tang Li was in so much pain that he wanted to dodge. Ning Jing narrowed her eyes. He didn't dare to dodge and obediently let her step on him. Ning Jing gave him a look of disdain and said in a low voice, "That's what you get for talking so much." Jinzi stood upright behind Mu Ling'er. He glanced at Tang Li's foot from the corner of his eye and quickly looked away. He pretended not to see it and was even more indifferent to Tang Li's words. His thin and handsome face remained cold. Mu Ling'er's greatest happiness in this life was not having a Qi brother, but having a husband who allowed her to talk about Qi brother without hesitation. Only those with a guilty conscience would avoid talking about it. Only those who were truly magnanimous would dare to talk about it. He understood. Mu Ling'er snorted at Tang Li. "My big sis doesn't need my big brother to keep her company. Tang Clanhead, just you wait. Once your big brother breaks through the ice, see if he'll take care of you." Tang Li was a little dumbfounded when he heard the words, "My brother, my sister, your brother." He lowered his head, feeling helpless and aggrieved. He really did not mean anything else. It was not that he had a bad mouth. He was just the fastest. Ning Jing was amused. She said to Mu Ling'er, "He doesn't need his brother to deal with him. Your sister is the first one to poison him into a mute." Tang Li muttered, "I'm starting to miss my sister-in-law's mute medicine." His words made Ning Jing and Mu Ling'er, who were originally laughing, fall silent at the same time. They were all sad. It had been a year. Everyone missed them, especially Royer. At this moment, the snow wolf leaped onto the shore and landed beside them. Mu Ling'er hurriedly ran over and hugged the snow wolf's neck. "Little thing, long time no see. How are you?" The snow wolf immediately broke free from her hands and walked to the side. It shook the mountain and then raised its head to howl at the moon. It looked mighty, but it was actually arrogant. It quickly returned to Mu Ling'er's side and rubbed against her affectionately. Only then did it crawl down as if urging them on. Mu Ling'er and the rest hurriedly sat on it. The snow wolf turned around and leaped into the ice sea. It sped away and soon disappeared into the darkness. As soon as Mu Ling'er and the rest arrived at the ice cave, they were stunned. They saw that the originally cold and dark ice cave had been transformed into a large ice palace. With ice as the outer wall, stone as the inner wall, wood as the pillars, and jade as the decorations, the entire cave was divided into 4 parts. The outer hall, the inner hall, the left and right side halls, and the place where the cave entrance faced was the front yard. It no longer looked like an ice cave, but more like a palace hidden under ice. At this moment, the entire palace hall was filled with lanterns. Each and every one of these lanterns was extremely exquisite and beautiful. However, the flames in the lanterns were not open flames, but luminous pearls. In such a cold place, it was difficult to maintain a flame. This courtyard was filled with sunflowers. Even in the dark, they bloomed brilliantly. Although they were all fake flowers, they were enough to pass off as real, giving people a warm feeling like they were bathing in the sun. Mu Ling'er and the rest had not been here for more than half a year. They were very surprised to see all this. However, they did not need to ask to know that other than Gu, no one else could be so extravagant. At this moment, a woman walked out. She was dressed simply and neatly. She was beautiful and playful. She did not look young, but she still gave people the feeling of a young lady. Who was she? Mu Ling'er and Ning Jing were shocked. Tang Li and Jin Zi almost protected their wives behind them at the same time. Tang Li said coldly, "Who are you?" The woman smiled and said, "I'm Ning Cheng's wife, Shangguan Juer." Tang Li and the rest came to a realization and relaxed their guard. Of course, they all knew that Ning Cheng had married a wife in the mysterious continent. However, Ning Cheng had not brought her over, so they did not recognize her. Ning Jing was overjoyed. "Sister-in-law, I finally meet you. Where's Yuan? Is he here too?" Everyone was introducing themselves to each other when the sound of an argument came from the hall. Everyone hurried in and saw two girls, one older and one younger, quarreling. The older girl was about 13 years old. She was clearly a pretty girl, but she was dressed as a man. Her black hair was tied up high, and she wore a sapphire blue robe with a jade belt around her waist. She looked like a handsome and thin youth. The younger girl was about 6 years old. She was petite and wore a light yellow fairy dress. Her hair was combed into two simple buns. She was slightly plump and had a chubby little face and big round eyes. She was cute and adorable. The older girl was, of course, the eldest daughter of the Tang sect, Tang Li and Ning Jing's only daughter, Tang Hongdo. The younger girl was Mu Ling and Jin Zi's daughter, Jin Ling. At this moment, the two of them were looking at each other angrily and arguing non-stop. "Little girl, I'm telling you, I'm definitely going to be a secret agent. I'll never give it to you. I don't care, you have to agree even if you don't want to." "Oh, you little girl, how dare you talk to me like that? At worst, I'll give you half of my money." Hearing this, Jin Zi, who was always expressionless, unconsciously rubbed his nose. A faint smile appeared on his face, full of doting. In this world, he was helpless against his two daughters. One was Big Ling and the other was Little Ling. Mu Ling couldn't help but say, "Little girl, how long has it been since we last met? You're already planning to buy your father?" Tang Hongdo and Jin Ling both turned around and realized that their parents were here. The two of them didn't have time to quarrel and rushed over. Tang Hongdo threw herself into Tang Li's arms and wrapped her arms around his neck. "Daddy, you're finally here. I missed you so much." Jin Ling threw herself at Jin Zi and burrowed into his arms as hard as she could. She actually started to cry. She wasn't crying because she quarreled with Tang Hongdo. She was crying because she missed her parents. When she cried, Jin Zi panicked. "Don't cry. What's wrong? What's wrong?" Jin Zi looked at Mu Ling helplessly. Mu Ling ignored him and looked up at the sky. She was undoubtedly jealous. Tang Jing looked at Tang Li and his daughter unhappily. Her jealousy was no less than Mu Ling's. Jin Zi couldn't do anything about Jin Ling. He could only carry his daughter to Mu Ling. Mu Ling hugged her daughter and comforted her gently. Ning Jing, on the other hand, didn't wait for Tang Li to carry her daughter to her. She snatched her away herself. Mu Ling and Tang Jing were jealous. They weren't jealous of their daughter, but of their husband. They couldn't understand. They were pregnant for 10 months and painstakingly gave birth to a child. How could they be closer to their father? After a long period of tenderness, the two children finally got up from their mother's arms. Little Jin Ling spoke first. "Tang Hongdo, I want to be a spy." "No. What kind of information can a little girl like you get? Who would believe you and hire you? It would be strange if they don't suspect you. You should learn medicine from your mother and take the pharmaceutical exam of Divine Herbalist Valley. I guarantee that you will be invincible in the world and become famous in one fell swoop. You will become the most valued disciple of Divine Herbalist Valley Master. As long as you make the Valley Master happy, you can sell whatever medicine you want. You can earn a lot of gold ingots. Tell me, why are you fighting with your sister over him?" "I'm..." Just like that, Tang Hongdo rambled on and on. Little Jin Ling couldn't find a chance to interrupt at all. She listened and finally couldn't stand it and covered her ears. "Stop." Not to mention little Jin Ling, even the adults on the side couldn't stand it and covered their ears. Only Tang Li looked at his daughter and smiled very happily. This daughter and Ning Jing were simply the same. Everything was like Ning Jing, but this mouth was like him. Little Jean Ling asked her to stop, but Tang Hongdo still didn't stop. Finally, little Jean Ling cried loudly. Finally, Tang Hongdo stopped. Little Jean Ling glanced at her and continued to cry without any intention of stopping. The two sisters, one couldn't stop talking and the other couldn't stop crying. When they were together, many times the adults couldn't do anything about it. Tang Hongdo couldn't stand it anymore and covered her ears. She said fiercely, "Enough! I'll let you." Little Jean Ling was only 6 years old after all. She seemed to be frightened and was stunned for a moment before crying even louder. At this time, a cold and low voice came from the inner hall. "You're all here? What's going on?" Tang Li and the other adults didn't hear the voice clearly for a moment. They all turned their heads and mistakenly thought that the person who walked out was Long Fei Yi. However, the person who came was Ning Qing. He was holding a boy who was about 6 years old, about the same age as little Ling Er. However, unlike little Ling Er's childish and cute appearance, this child stood upright with a serious expression. There was a heroic aura between his brows that didn't match his age. Tang Jing called out, "Big brother." Jean Zi explained, "It's nothing. The children are just playing." Little Jean Ling's crying had already stopped abruptly. Tang Hongdo was so scared that she hid behind her father. Both children were afraid of Ning Qing. Ning Qing actually smiled for the first time. He smiled faintly. "Is that so? Come in and play. It's lively." They passed through the main hall and arrived at the inner hall. Here, Gu still hung lanterns all over the place. It was bright and lively. Everyone wanted to come in, but when they really came, their eyes didn't dare to look forward. In front of them, in the frozen pool, Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi were still holding each other's hands as they looked at each other. The ice was very thick. Only their silhouettes could be seen, but their faces couldn't be seen clearly. But even so, they could still feel their deep affection for each other. They were willing to win each other's hearts, even in life and death. On this white ice there was a touch of red curled up. It was so red that it was eye-catching, coquettish, and wanton. This was Gu, who was curled up next to the ice and sleeping. He drank wine last night and came back drunk. He chatted with Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi for the whole night. As he chatted, he curled up next to Long Fei Yi and fell asleep. If Ning Qing hadn't given him the medicine to resist the cold, he would have died from the cold. Mu Ling Er felt sorry for him. Just as she was about to go over, Gu slowly sat up, stretched lazily, and stood up. Dressed in a red robe, coupled with that peerless face, he lazily got up from the ice like a demon who had just woken up after sleeping for 1,000 years. Actually, he had already woken up, but he was too lazy to get up. He looked at everyone, and his gaze finally fell on little Jean Ling and Tang Hongdo. His long and narrow peach blossom eyes quickly narrowed, and his smile became even wider. He was indescribably good-looking. Little Jean Ling and Tang Hongdo immediately rushed over and burrowed into Gu Qishao's arms to complain. "Seventh uncle, sister won't let me. Seventh uncle, you be the judge. She's snatching it." Gu didn't have children himself, but he was better at coaxing children than the parents present. He rubbed little Ling Er's nose and smiled. "Crybaby, you cry as much as your mother. Here, this is for you. In the future, when you want to cry, just knock on it and count how many gold ingots you've hidden. You'll be able to laugh." As Gu spoke, he handed over a golden abacus made of pure gold. It was small and exquisite and noble. Little Jean Ling was pleasantly surprised, and her eyes lit up. She grabbed it and hugged it in her arms, afraid that it would be snatched away. Everyone laughed when they saw this, and Tang Hongdo was unhappy. "Seventh uncle." Gu Qishao pinched Tang Hongdo's nose and grinned. "You're the big sister, so give way to Jean Ling Er. Seventh uncle will find you a job at the auction house as an auctioneer, how's that?" Tang Hongdo liked to go to the black market since she was young, and she especially admired the awe-inspiring auctioneers on the stage. She was overjoyed and agreed immediately. Seeing that Tang Hongdo was happy, little Jinling was also happy. She suddenly thought of Shadow and asked anxiously, "Where's Brother Shadow? Why isn't he here yet?" The adults looked at each other and didn't answer for a long time. Gu Nanshan had disappeared before the new year. Other than little Jinling, everyone present knew about this. Tang Hongdo quickly said, "Brother Shadow has an important clue to follow. He can't come today." Little Jinling muttered to herself, "If only he could find Big Sister Yenner, how great would that be!" At this moment, the poisonous beast that had been standing at the side suddenly disappeared into thin air. There was no doubt that Han Yunshi had put it into the poison storage space. Han Yunshi and Long Fei Yi must have heard their conversation and missed their daughter and little Shadow. Gu patted Xian Bing lightly and muttered, "Poison girl, no news is good news. Don't worry. Maybe Shadow has found Yenner, but he's still on the way back. Let's wait a little longer."